echoed across the banquet hall, sharp enough to slice through my skin. My Aunt Brenda leaned back in her chair, smirking as if she'd just delivered the funniest joke of the night. "Her husband will leave her too," she said, her voice loud enough to make sure every head at the table turned toward me. "Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from, and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation. Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin." The clinking of glasses and the low murmur of conversation fell silent. My cousins, their eyes flashing with cruelty, burst into mocking giggles. Uncle Roger let out a dry chuckle, shaking his head as if my existence was nothing but proof of failure. Heat flushed up my neck, but I didn't move. I didn't speak. My fingers tightened around the edge of my chair, nails digging into the wood, anchoring myself against the weight of humiliation. "Honestly, Natalie," Brenda sneered, swirling her wine glass like she was savoring my pain, "did you really think marrying someone who looks average with no background, no money, no family name was going to save you? You must be dreaming. Men like that don't stay. You'll end up alone just like your mother." A chorus of laughter followed, like a cruel orchestra that played only for my disgrace. I pressed my lips together, staring down at the tablecloth patterned with fading roses, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. My cousin Rachel leaned in, her perfume so strong it suffocated me, and whispered, "Don't worry, Nat. You can come clean my house when he leaves you. I'll pay you, of course." Her words dripped with fake sympathy, and the others roared with laughter again. My father, seated at the head of the table, didn't defend me. He sipped his whiskey, his silence louder than all their mockery combined. That silence burned more than their words. I kept quiet. My pulse hammered against my throat, every second stretching like a blade against my patience. Then, the sound of an engine purred outside, not just any engine. A deep, smooth growl that turned heads toward the tall windows. My uncle squinted, his smirk fading. The headlights of a sleek black Rolls-Royce cut through the evening. The laughter faltered. The valet jogged forward, opening the door with hurried respect. And then he stepped out. My husband, Daniel. His polished shoes hit the pavement with deliberate weight. The tailored suit hugged his broad frame. His wrist, heavy with an understated watch, caught the light. The air inside the banquet hall shifted instantly. Jaws slackened. Forks froze midair. Daniel didn't glance around nervously. He didn't shuffle or apologize for being late. He walked in like he owned every brick of that building, every breath in the room. And when his eyes found mine, I felt the weight of the silence. "Good evening," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "I'm sorry I'm late. Traffic was heavier than expected." No one laughed. No one dared. He reached my side, pulling my chair back gently. His hand brushed mine, grounding me in the middle of my storm. Then he turned to the stunned faces staring at him. "I heard some of you had opinions about me," he said coolly, scanning their pale expressions. "But before you embarrass yourselves further, let me properly introduce who I am." The room went deathly still. Daniel's lips curved into the faintest smile. "I'm Daniel Carter, Chief Executive Officer of Carter Holdings, the same Carter family you've been trying to do business with for years." The gasp that followed could have shattered glass. I sat frozen, my chest rising and falling as I watched their arrogance collapse in slow motion. The same relatives who had mocked me moments ago now looked like children caught stealing. And Daniel wasn't done. "I don't usually make a show of myself," he said, adjusting his cufflinks, his voice as steady as stone. "But I don't tolerate disrespect toward my wife. Not from anyone." His last words lingered in the air, sharp and final. I lifted my chin, finally meeting Brenda's wide eyes. For the first time all night, she had no clever remark. Silence had never felt so satisfying. The silence in the hall was thick after Daniel's words. My father tried to recover first, forcing a thin smile. "Daniel, we didn't mean any harm. It was just family humor." Daniel looked at him steadily. "Mocking my wife isn't humor. It's disrespect." Aunt Brenda shifted nervously, her glass trembling. "We tease because we care," she said weakly. I let out a sharp laugh. "No, you tease because it makes you feel bigger. You've never once cared about me." My cousin Rachel muttered, "You never said he was..." then stopped, staring at Daniel like she was seeing him for the first time. Uncle Roger cleared his throat. Carter Holdings, huh? You should have told us earlier, Natalie. We could have worked together. Daniel slid a folded page onto the table. You mean the meetings you begged for last month? We passed, for a reason. The blood drained from Roger's face. Daniel turned back to my father. I don't care about your jokes, but I won't let anyone treat my wife like she's worthless. Not in front of me, not ever. I raised my chin, meeting Brenda's shocked eyes. For once, none of them had anything left to say. The air felt like it had dropped 20 degrees. My relatives, who just minutes ago had laughed loud enough to shake the walls, now sat frozen, their faces pale with shock. Forks rested untouched on plates. Wine glasses trembled slightly in nervous hands. My father finally broke the silence. Enough of this spectacle, he muttered, voice low but sharp. Natalie, you've always had a flair for drama. Now, you've dragged us all into it. I turned my head slowly toward him, my patience frayed. Drama. My voice carried louder than I expected. You sat there and let them humiliate me. You never defended me, not once. And now that the truth is in front of you, you call this drama? He swallowed hard, his jaw tightening, but said nothing. Daniel stood firm beside me, calm yet unmovable. With all due respect, sir, what happened here tonight isn't drama. It's exposure. People reveal who they really are when they think no one's watching. My cousin Rachel shifted in her seat, eyes darting nervously. Natalie, you know we didn't mean it personally. We were just joking around. Joking? I leaned forward, my voice trembling now, not with fear but with years of buried anger. You mocked me every chance you got, called me weak, useless, said I'd never keep a man. You called me a burden in front of strangers. That isn't a joke. That's cruelty. Rachel dropped her gaze to her lap. Daniel glanced around the table, his presence filling the silence. I don't care about your approval, but here's what you need to understand. Natalie is my wife. She's my partner, and the way you've treated her is unacceptable. She doesn't owe you her silence anymore. Uncle Roger tried to force a chuckle, his voice breaking. All right. Maybe we went too far. Let's not ruin the evening. Why don't we all just... No, I cut in, my tone firm. We will ruin the evening. Because for once, I'm not going to sit here and swallow it. I'm done letting all of you decide my worth like it's some game. The room was still, the weight of my words pressing down on every smirk and every false smile they had ever worn around me. Aunt Brenda finally put her glass down with a loud clink. Her voice wavered, desperate now. Natalie, you have to understand, we only said those things because we thought you settled. We thought your husband was... ordinary? Daniel's expression hardened, but he didn't raise his voice. And that's the problem. You measure a person's worth by the size of their paycheck or the name on their business card. You would have written me off without ever knowing who I am. I looked at my aunt, then at my father, then at every face at that table. My hands no longer shook. For the first time in years, I felt taller. You didn't just mock him, you mocked me. And now you've all been exposed for what you are, shallow, calculating, and cruel. The silence that followed was the most satisfying sound I'd ever heard. The tension in that banquet hall was suffocating. Every tick of the old wall clock above the bar echoed like thunder. No one lifted a fork. The once boisterous family dinner had turned into a silent standoff, and every set of eyes seemed desperate to find a way out, except mine. I was done hiding behind silence. My father cleared his throat, shifting in his chair like a man who had been caught off guard in his own home. Natalie, lower your voice, he ordered, his words clipped and cold. You're embarrassing yourself. I laughed bitterly. Embarrassing myself? You sat there while your family mocked me, mocked your own daughter, and you said nothing. You let them tear me down because it was easier than standing up for me. His lips thinned, the mask of control slipping just a little. You've always been dramatic, sensitive. You take everything too seriously. They were teasing. You can't expect people to walk on eggshells around you. Daniel's hand rested lightly on the back of my chair, steady, grounding me. His voice cut through the room like steel. There's a difference between teasing and cruelty. What happened here tonight wasn't harmless fun. It was humiliation. And the silence from the head of this table only proved how little value you place on your own daughter's dignity. My father's jaw clenched. He turned his gaze to Daniel, trying to assert control. With all due respect, Daniel, this is a family matter. Outsiders don't dictate how we speak to each other. Daniel didn't flinch. Then maybe that's why this family has fractured into bitterness and shallow competition, because no one has the courage to tell the truth. The words landed like stones dropped into water, the ripples reaching everyone. My Aunt Brenda lowered her eyes. Roger rubbed at the back of his neck. Rachel stared down at her plate, cheeks flushed with shame, or maybe fear. But my father wasn't ready to give in. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. You think money gives you the right to stand here and lecture us? Don't mistake wealth for wisdom, Daniel. Men like you are temporary. You show up, make noise, and disappear when the tide changes. Daniel's voice didn't rise, but the power in it made the air heavier. I didn't build my life on noise, sir. I built it on discipline, respect, and loyalty. And loyalty is something your daughter has given you in abundance, while you've returned nothing but silence. The room stilled. My chest tightened. For years, I had wished someone, anyone, would say those words aloud. And now, hearing them from the man I married, I felt tears burn at the back of my eyes, not from weakness, but from release. Don't talk to me about loyalty, my father snapped, his tone suddenly harsher. Loyalty is staying with your family no matter what. Loyalty is not running off with a man who hid who he really was. She didn't even tell us his name properly until now. What kind of loyalty is that? My voice broke through before Daniel could respond. You don't get to lecture me about loyalty, Dad. You taught me from the time I was a child that my worth depended on how much I could offer you, how much I could give back, how useful I was to this family's reputation. I stayed quiet because I thought that was loyalty. I endured your silence, your dismissal, their mockery, because I thought that was love. But love doesn't look like this. And loyalty doesn't mean destroying myself just to keep your pride intact. Brenda's face twisted. Oh, listen to her? Acting like she's some victim. Natalie, we gave you everything. A roof over your head, a seat at this table. A seat at the table? I cut her off, my voice rising now, refusing to back down. You mean the seat you only gave me so you could laugh when I spoke? The seat you used to remind me I didn't belong? That wasn't a gift. That was a cage. Daniel stepped forward now, commanding the space like a man used to boardrooms full of men who underestimated him. He wasn't yelling, but his calm was more unsettling than if he had shouted. I didn't want to do this tonight, but let me be clear. My name isn't just Daniel Carter. It's Daniel Carter of Carter Holdings. And for those of you who haven't been paying attention, our company owns significant stakes in businesses connected to this family. Your shops, your offices, even your suppliers. Roger's face drained of color. That's not possible. Daniel's eyes locked on him. I don't bluff. Every deal you've tried to chase, every email you've sent begging for meetings, I've seen them all. I stayed silent out of respect for Natalie. But that respect ends when you drag her name through the mud. Rachel whispered under her breath. Oh my God, but no one dared move. My father sat back, his face unreadable, but his knuckles were white where they gripped the armrests. So this is it then? Your big moment? You came here to humiliate us? Daniel shook his head slowly. I came here because my wife asked me to. She still believed there was a chance for reconciliation. She hoped that maybe, beneath all the arrogance, this family could show her the respect she deserves. But all I've seen tonight is cruelty masked as humor, and silence dressed up as authority. The weight of his words lingered. For once, my relatives looked small, stripped of their power, their arrogance, their ability to turn the spotlight on me. I took a deep breath, standing now, no longer shrinking into my chair. You wanted to see me fail. You wanted me abandoned, broken, crawling back to you for scraps of approval. But tonight you saw the truth. You don't get to decide my worth. Not anymore. And you'll never use my silence as your shield again. The chandelier lights reflected in Daniel's watch as he extended his hand toward me. I slipped mine into his, steady and sure. And for the first time, the silence in the room felt like victory. No one dared speak. The clinking of cutlery, the laughter, the constant hum of superiority that used to fill every family gathering. It was gone. The banquet hall felt hollow now, like the walls themselves were ashamed of what they'd just witnessed. My father finally leaned back in his chair, his voice low, cold, but shaking. So what now, Natalie? You think you're better than all of us? You think marrying a man with money suddenly makes you untouchable? I met his stare head on, my hand still clasped in Daniel's. Number, I think I'm finally free from the chains you kept tightening around me. I don't measure myself by your standards anymore. Daniel stepped forward, his tone quiet but cutting. This isn't about money. It's about respect. Something this family has withheld from Natalie for years. You saw her kindness as weakness. You mistook her patience for naivety. But you underestimated the strength it takes to sit through cruelty and still carry yourself with dignity. Uncle Roger let out a strained laugh, trying to claw back some control. Fine, you've had your speech. But business is business. You won't cut us off over some petty family argument. Daniel's gaze turned sharp, his voice precise. Business and integrity aren't separate. And I will never empower people who think tearing down their own blood is acceptable. Consider this the end of negotiations. Roger's mouth opened, then closed again. For once, he had nothing left to barter with. Rachel's eyes glistened with regret. She whispered, "Natalie, I'm sorry." But the words felt hollow, far too late. I straightened my shoulders, my voice firm, steady. You don't get to wound me for years and then toss out apologies when you're cornered. Respect isn't begged, it's earned. And you lost your chance. Aunt Brenda's face twisted with disbelief. After everything we've done for you, you're walking away? I smiled, not bitter, but certain. Number, I'm finally standing up. Daniel placed a reassuring hand on my back, then looked around the table one last time. His voice dropped, calm yet final. Natalie doesn't need your approval. She never did. She chose grace when you gave her cruelty. She chose silence when she could have exposed you. But that ends tonight. From this point forward, you either respect her or you lose access to both of us. Permanently. The words fell like a gavel. There was no arguing, no bargaining, no way out. The room collapsed into silence once more. But this time, it wasn't the silence of control. It was the silence of defeat. I squeezed Daniel's hand, my heart lighter than it had been in years. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the quiet girl sitting in the corner, waiting for their approval. I was the woman walking out of that hall with my head high, leaving their mockery behind like ashes. And as the valet pulled the gleaming Rolls-Royce to the front steps, my family stared through the tall windows, stunned, shaken.